My name is Sue Wickison. I'm a trained scientific illustrator. My involvement in the project started from a visit, one of 3 visits to the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, and an incredible place to visit. And all over the floor and the columns and the walls, instead of geometric shapes, you've got these most beautiful botanical motifs in the marble. And it's so dramatic. So I was inquiring, what do the motifs mean, or is there any information about them? And at the time there didn't seem to be much information, and then that sort of led me to thinking, are there plants in the Holy Quran? And it's a mixture of plants there. But then there didn't seem to be a lot of books written about it, and so I contacted a colleague at Kew Gardens where I used to work and asked if there was a botanist that was familiar with plants, particularly from the Middle East. And so he put me in touch with Dr Shahina Ghazanfar.
My name is Shahina Ghazanfar. I am a research associate here at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, where I worked for a long time. I'm retired now, but I worked here for quite a long time. Why I started working or researching on the plants of the Quran was that quite some time ago, there was a meeting in the United Arab Emirates, in fact in Sharjah, where they wanted to make an Islamic garden and have all the plants that are mentioned in the Quran to be growing over there. I was at that time in Oman because I was a teacher there, I was a lecturer, a professor there. So, and I am a botanist, so they involved me in that botanic garden that they wanted to create, or an Islamic garden that they wanted to create. That was my kind of beginning. I mean, as a Muslim, you always grow up with a lot of plants that are mentioned. Your parents tell you the dates, for example, you open your fast with the dates, so it's a very much a part of the culture of a Muslim. Pomegranate, oil, zaytun. We were always told that these plants have been mentioned in the Quran. So apart from these 4 or 5 plants, when they wanted all the plants, so I said, okay, I'll have a look at, and that was the first time I started to look at the Quran in a completely different manner. And then quite by chance, Sue, who is the botanical illustrator for the book, I met up with her through another colleague of mine in Kew. And she was interested to know what plants were, because she was interested to draw them and illustrate them and paint them. And that request came down to me. And I was researching on this, and she came over, we met up, and I said, there's no budget for all the illustrations, but would you be interested to illustrate the book that I'm writing? And she said, yes. And that's the collaboration started. And that was a good, I would say, 8 years of collaboration.
My father was an amateur botanist and used to go out collecting plants for students. He was also a teacher. So he would go out collecting plants for teaching about the plants to his students and the uses of the plants, so ethnobotany. So I would, from a very young age, I would go out into the bush with my father. And so you learn that respect of the bush, you learn that appreciation of plants, attention to detail, getting to know them. And so that's where the initial love of plants and an interest in observation came from. And so you're going back to a heritage variety that hasn't changed, and it's not a modern one that you can pick up in the supermarket. So it brings that authenticity to the project and to the research and to the work. So that's the first stage, is actually finding the plant, or whether it's going to the deserts in Sharjah or the other parts of the UAE. So initially finding the plant, and then making sure, obviously working with Shahina, that I've actually got the right species and right specimen.
For some of the work, or some of the plants are actually mentioned in the Mesopotamian, ancient Mesopotamian culture. And those are written on small cuneiform text on clay tablets. I can't read that. So for those, I had the help of a friend who can actually read cuneiform text and translated some of the plants.
I was talking to a Muslim friend of mine, and she was talking about the date seed. And she was talking about it, the different parts of the date seed, obviously from her belief, and she talked about something being as small as the tiny little thread that joins the seed to the inside of the fruit. or the kitmia, the sheath around the seed. And I knew about these, both of these, obviously, from studying it and looking at it. And she was talking about it from something as small as it's still significant how whether your deeds are good or bad, even as small as a tiny thread. But then she went further and she talked about the nakir, the tiny little dot of the dimple on the seed, and I thought, I don't know about that. And so, in the interest of science, I had to eat a few more dates. Then, and sure enough, on each one was the little dimple. So I was learning. We were talking about the same thing one from a faith, one from a botanical aspect, and so I was able to say, well, that's the point of germination, where this little root will come through, and she was seeing it as the tiniest point of a good deed or a bad deed, is still significant.
So that was my research, was to actually trace the background history of each plant, and that was quite important. So the book that it's not a religious book, it traces the history and the culture of each plant, like how was it used, where it was originally from.
Hoping that people will come away being inspired, as I have been, enjoying the movement in the paintings, enjoying seeing them and what they mean within the verses, and there's a lot. We're all learning. So the reaction from people has been phenomenal, and as I keep coming back to saying, it's a group effort, and it's very humbling. So I'm always sort of not deflecting the comments away, but I'm very grateful for the comments, and it is incredible to receive them, absolutely. But it's a group thing.